Hello friends, this is Odds, and in this video we're going to be talking about the artist syndrome. It is a term that you might have heard me or someone else use in the community, and the long story short is that the artist syndrome describes a certain type of killer that, similar to the artist, is very strong, but somehow quite unpopular. You're more likely than not playing these killers very much, and if you play Survivor, you probably don't see them in your games more than maybe once a week. But why is this? We're going to get into that. But to understand why these killers are so unpopular, let's first look at the opposite. Let's first look at the popular killers in Dead by Daylight. In my opinion, the three most popular killers in Dead by Daylight's history are the Blight, Wesker, and the Ghoul. The Ghoul is the current king of showing up in every single one of your Survivor sessions, the current most popular killer in the game right now for a variety of reasons. Before that, Wesker had a really good run for a couple years where he was by far the most popular character across different MMRs for sure. And before that even, I think overall Blight has been the most popular killer that you will see at high MMR lobbies for the last 5 years or so. He shows up pretty much every single one of your sessions. I think at one point I had 7 Blights in a row when the MMR was first introduced, and I almost lost my mind. So I think these three killers are probably the most popular, again, at high MMR Survivor that you can think of. What do they have in common? Well, many of them are popular licenses, which does help. A licensed killer often is more popular than other killers that are not. For example, Ghostface is not particularly strong, but still pretty popular. They also have mobility. Even killers that are not very strong, even if they have any mobility at all, like Legion, are sometimes popular and show up pretty high in the pick rate, right? And it doesn't really help to make them less popular, the fact that they are easy to pick up, but they also have a high skill ceiling. You can actually do fairly well with all three of these killers. They are pretty strong in the tier list. But more important than that for this conversation is the fact that you can almost never play these killers wrong. Almost no matter how you use your power, you are making some sort of progress. With Ghoul, even the clumsiest plays often result in you injuring survivors. It is very easy to at least get an injury on survivors, and that gets the ball rolling. With Blight, you will be closing the gap to survivors very quickly as well, and even if you don't finish a rush with a hit, you often are destroying pallets and again making progress and keeping the ball rolling. Wesker is possibly the hardest one. With Wesker, you can sometimes mess up and set yourself back a little bit. You can also toss a survivor into the air, or maybe have one of those weird situations where the survivor just kind of escapes your grasp. But even in these situations, you can still do something about it to prevent them, and they still result in the survivor being infected, which wastes their time when they have to spray that infection away, or gets them insta-down if they don't. So even with Wesker, you are still making some kind of progress. But this is the opposite of what you have with artist syndrome killers. Artist syndrome killers do not always make progress in chase. In fact, they sometimes reset their own progress. So say, for example, that you're playing artist for the first time and nobody has explained to you, and the game certainly doesn't explain it to you, that you should not be using multiple birds on the first time you're trying to hit a survivor from a distance. If you keep shooting 2 birds at a time, 2 birds at a time, 2 birds at a time, as you can see in this footage, you just never get it down. The survivors can shrug off the birds and remove the swarm before you ever damage them. This might seem very stupid to you if you're an artist player, but to a lot of beginners, this is how they play. They don't realize that they're using their power wrong. Not only do they not get it down, they constantly reset their blood loss, which means that they are not really making progress. They're not really closing the gap to survivors, and this is a problem. Now, let's have a look at the Unknown. The Unknown is a very strong killer when played well, but if you are missing about 50% of your shots, you are making no progress whatsoever. Keep in mind that if survivors look at you, they remove the weakened status effect, and if they're not weakened, your shot doesn't injure them. So that means that if you have a 50% accuracy rate with Unknown, you are not making any progress whatsoever as long as the survivor is staring at you. Now, this might seem a bit arbitrary for me to make you miss half your shots, but keep in mind that this does not affect other killers. If you are missing half your hatchets as the hunters, you're completely fine. If you are missing half your rushes as a Blight, that's completely normal, and you're going to be completely fine. But missing half your shots with this killer results in you doing absolutely no progress. Let's keep this in mind, yeah? There are other killers with similar patterns where if you play them a certain way, you might feel like you're doing something, but in reality you're not. Or maybe you are, but at a very slow rate. And I think that this feature is the core center of what makes a artist syndrome killer. An artist syndrome killer is a killer that has to do a lot more work than other killers to obtain a similar result. And this is a horrible cocktail. People in general do not want to do a lot of work only to get very little returns. And sadly, some of these killers also have additional issues that do not help the situation. For example, some of them, and if you think about the Houndmaster as an artist syndrome killer, are very buggy, do not receive a lot of cosmetics, are not cool licenses that everybody loves, and as a result, the community leaves them behind a little bit, and they don't have a lot of love. There's also an unfortunate fact that a lot of people don't like to play against these killers, so even the survivors that don't play against these killers often are not really grateful. The fact that some of them have very bad teachables doesn't really help as well. This one is a little bit of a smaller one, and it's quite sad. But these killers just sometimes do not have a fun animation or a fun sound effect that makes the down and the thrill of the hunt really satisfying, okay? I'm going to compare two clips of a killer that is really popular and a killer that is really unpopular. You tell me which of these sounds feels more satisfying. Yeah, right? Like, it's like the second one didn't have an animation at all. Now, let's go for a different clip, okay? This time, let's use the Huntress. Did you see how satisfying it was to hit a survivor across the map? What happens if you do the same with the artist? As you can see, it's not quite the same. There's not really a fancy sound effect or anything like that. Unfortunately, the developers have not really listened to the requests from the community to add some kind of nice effect when you down a survivor from afar. It's one of those small things that could begin to make this killer feel a little bit better. There's a lot of work that killers like artists need, but with DBD being such a big monumental project, yeah, I guess small details like this are getting left behind sometimes. Anyway, that's what the artist syndrome is. I hope you have a deeper understanding of it now and a deeper appreciation every time you go against one of these killers that are becoming more and more rare every single day.